Good morning, Sambonani. My name is Pervaiz Khan. I'm the co-convener of Reframing Africa with my colleague Cynthia Kros. I'd like to welcome you today and to tomorrow, which are going to be two very packed but inspiring days. Reframing Africa was started in 2016 when we realized that there was a very special anniversary in the early part of that year that was on the horizon. The anniversary was of the first screenings of films in Africa. So what happened in 1895 in Europe, that the Lumiere brothers held the first film screenings in Paris, which was in 1895, December 28th. A short while later, the first screenings took place in London by somebody called R.W. Paul, who was an engineer and a scientist. So he came up with a similar technology as the Lumiere brothers. And that was in February, March of 1896. It just happened that an American magician was passing through London at that time. He saw this technology, the cinematograph, being used by R.W. Paul and wanted it for his magic show. R.W. Paul refused because he only had two of these projectors, and he said no. And the magician, Carl Hertz, got him drunk on the last night in London and put some money in his hand and took a screwdriver and unscrewed the cinematograph from the platform and put it on a ship. The ship was sailing to South Africa. He arrived in South Africa, and in May 1896, he arrived in Johannesburg and set up the first public screening in Africa in Johannesburg, about 10 minutes walk from where I am now in Johannesburg. And so within 6 months of this technology coming to life in Europe, it also came to life in Africa. So Africa was part of that loop from the very beginning, in the sense of the visual image and the role it has played in our lives. The technology itself initially built on what was already there in photography, and later it added the audio. And now, obviously, in all our lives across the world, it plays a role in one form or another, from our mobile phones to the laptop screens that you're probably watching this on. So it's become part of what our daily lives are, wherever we are in the world, in different sorts of ways. But what we're looking at is the importance and significance of the archive over this weekend, because we realized some time ago, this is the 4th edition in terms of Reframing Africa. The first one was a very modest affair, which our brothers and comrades Abu Bakr and John Akomfro were part of in 2016 in May, and the subsequent ones, they've grown. But we've decided to focus on the archive, the cinematic archive, the visual archive, the photographic archive, the audio archive, and how it interconnects. And obviously, because the technology of cinema brings all of these together. I don't want to spend too much time saying much more. This event, the webinars, are made possible through the Wits School of Arts, who I work for, the History Workshop, which is at Wits, the Market Photo Workshop, and the Windybrow Arts Centre, who've all been partners in this journey that we're embarking on. And it's an ongoing journey. The first panel will, Brother Silas will introduce. We're going to keep the introductions short. All of you should have a copy of the program, and you should also have abstracts and biographies for each of the speakers. I look forward to you joining us for the rest of the weekend and listening to all the panelists. Go well.
My name is Silas Nkosi. I will be chairing the panel, the visual as the archival monument. And I have 3 amazing panel members that will be sharing their work with us today, and that we will also be engaging with. Just a short background on myself is that I am the manager curriculum and training at the Market Photo Workshop, and I'm also an educationist and I then am a master's student with Tshwane University of Technology. Like Pervaiz said, it's not about us, it's about these three amazing people that we have, and we're gonna then speak to these people and they're gonna tell us about their work. Right now, I need to introduce you to the first panel member, who is Mpho Khwezi. Mpho Khwezi is also a photographer and a facilitator at the Market Photo Workshop. Mpho Khwezi is work is talking about a piece of paper, and then when I saw this title, a piece of paper, like, are you referring to any piece of paper or what? Unfortunately, I then discovered that it's not just a piece of paper, but there's more to it. He's addressing issues of the past and the present in terms of the work that he does, how land can travel from past to present in terms of the visual. So we're looking forward to hear him present his work and then basically his processes as to how he has done his work. And then we also have, as Pervaiz have said, you have biographies and abstracts which you can read. We also have Paul Weinberg, who will be also speaking about the archivist as an activist. And Paul is more into digitizing the photographic work, and the imperative is driven by the needs of preservation, of public accessibility, of scholarship, and research, among others. But he will then take us through his work and give us what he's all about, and we will be looking forward to hearing from what Paul is going to present to us. I also have Thando Mama. Thando Mama is a practicing. He will be then talking to us about reframing Ntaba kaNdoda, and Thando Mama will then. He's a practicing artist, educator, and a researcher, and he also holds an MFA of photography from Wits University, among other things. So they will then present themselves and let us know about their good work. So without wasting any time, I'm going to hand you over to Mpho Khwezi to do his presentation on a piece of paper. But before I hand over to Mpho Khwezi, the request is that all the panelists will do their presentations, and as soon as they are done doing their presentations, we can then open it to the floor and start to engage in discussions, and then we will then also discuss, answer the questions that will be raised. So Mpho Khwezi, over to you.
Before I even start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mpho Khwezi. I'm a photographer and a photography facilitator at the Market Photo Workshop. So I've been a photographer for a couple of years and around 15 years. So also I've been a facilitator at the Market Photo Workshop for 11 years. So I've been on this journey of photography, and then at some point in relation to a piece of paper, the project that I'm going to be presenting to you is that the beginning of last year, I've noticed something. I've noticed the land grabs, people in South Africa around my community in Sebokeng, in the Vaal. So people moving around in Orange Farm, people moving around, occupying empty spaces. So in the back of my mind, so that it's something that was I had questions about it, like how do people just go and occupy the land that doesn't belong to them? Little did I know that I was going to be part of the taking over, because at some point I inherited the house from my grandmother, and then with my grandmother passing, the family members have had a problem with me owning the house alone, regardless whether I have a title deed. And then my culture, in our culture as Black people, it's not allowed to, you can't defend yourself with a title deed. So the title deed was overwritten by my family that I can't own the house alone. I deserve to live there with my cousins and everyone else, of which I wanted the space for myself because the title deed says it's my space. So then I started photographing this issue of a title deed, of which even while the proceeding was going, because I haven't even moved, but my family members, including my mother and my uncle, so they gathered together and changed the title deed. Went to the Home Affairs, went to the Mpho municipality and changed the title deed. To myself, I was asking myself, like, how come I had so much faith in a piece of paper of a title deed, but my family member have managed to change it? I don't know, like, I felt betrayed. I felt like I'm relying on a piece of paper that can never ever help me. So also here's another interesting point is that in South Africa, a lot of young people like me, we live in on inheritance. So in all the time, we don't have the land that we call our own. All the time, we're finding ourselves inheriting this land. And at some point, we end up raising our children at the houses or at the places or the flats that we have rented. At some point, our children sort of identify those spaces as their home, of which is not their home. You are renting, it's not your home. So there's been a lot of secrecy between the Black community. Like my mother have never shared any information regarding the title deed. My mother never said anything regarding the title deed. So while photographing the assignment, while photographing the project, so I was a friend of Miss Van Tondel. She was one of the white ladies who were occupying and owning the land of Sebokeng. So what brought me to her was photography. So she was photographing, and then we'll exchange ideas on photography. And during last year, when the land grabs came about, she had a title deed for the land, but she literally had to run away. I remember helping her pack her stuff, and then she wanted to throw away a box of lots of film that she photographed, but never actually processed. So I asked her to give me the film. So she did give me the film. So one thing that I didn't know what I was going to do with it. At some point, I said to myself, no, you know what? At some point, I'm gonna photograph this land issue and then print Miss Van Tondel's images and put them next to mine to sort of communicate an idea of land of people who have been misplaced. But I ran out of film at some point while I was photographing, and then I took a risk, and then I re-photographed on top of Miss Van Tondel's work. So what really happened was it gave me a fresh eye on how to look at this land issue. So when you're looking at my images from image number 1 until image number 9, the first image that I'm presenting on the slideshow is a husband of Miss Van Tondel, and then at the back is the landscape of the area where I'm living. I'm currently living, and the people that have occupied that land, my friends, the people that I grew up knowing, they've occupied that land already now. So it's that landscape. So I'm trying to communicate, or not even communicate, but complicate this idea of how things have always been, because we've always been following. Even when you're looking at issues of contracts at work, I feel like all these pieces of papers that we look for informative, they're not informative. They actually supporting the people who are giving it to you. Hence, I remember when I opened my exhibition at the Market Photo Workshop, 1989 gallery. One of the people who came to my exhibition was actually asking me a question like, Mpho, with the double exposure images, like the first image that I was speaking about, with that first image, is like, which one is Miss Van Tondel's image? And then I'm like, no, there's no Miss Van Tondel's image. It's my image. So also that what I've also created, and also the title of the work, A Piece of Paper, is also to sort of interrogate and also complicate and also ask a lot of questions to photographers. That is, what we photographing actually the truth, or is it informative the way we believe it's informative? Because when someone comes in and look at the just opposing images that I've done and want the white people, when they came to Africa, they said they occupied and they occupied an unclaimed land. So even with me, like the way I've used Miss Van Tonder's film is in a way of reclaiming used. So I think that's roughly how A Piece of Paper has been constructed. And also, what I also want to share with you is that I'm continuing with the project. It's not done. It's not finished. And also, the exhibition is still up at the Market for Workshop, 1989 Gallery. So I'm inviting people to come and check it out, and let's engage in this topic of a piece of paper.
Thank you. Thank you, Mpho Khwezi for that. I do not know if you would still want us to maybe look at a number of images that we must just look at. Maybe just quickly take us through the images that we have, giving you about 5 minutes to take us through just those images so that we can see what is on picture number 1, number 2, and all of that.
I can't see the images, but I know the numbers. But here it goes. So the first one, like I said, is Mr. Van Donder. He actually passed. The only person that left to inherit the land was Miss Van Donder. And then the second image, I can't remember what it is. I think, yeah, I know what it is. So it was at Miss Van Donder's house. There's a house that a helper used to stay in. So in that house, one thing that used to happen is that after building that house, at some point there was a tree growing inside the house. So it even demolished the roof of the house, and they chopped it down. But in months and years, it grew up. The tree grew again, and then still demolished the house. So the helper actually, they left the house as it is, and then build another house somewhere for the helper. And then when I went to ask them about that house, why is it abandoned? I saw the tree, but I thought the tree was behind the house, but it was actually inside the house. So I went inside the house. So that image is actually a passage of that house, because what I was also visualizing when the helper was telling me, like, Mpho, there's no way a tree can grow inside a house. I've been living. I've lived with my parents. A tree has never grown inside a house. So I think that house has got evil spirits, and then it's haunted, that house. So with that, I wanted to create that sort of a scary like movie. So to sort of support the message of the helper, saying the house in Miss Van Donder's yard that is abandoned is actually having evil spirits. So image number 3, I can't remember image number 3, Mr. Silas.
Yeah, no, what we can do is I think, thank you, Mpho, for doing a presentation. What I would just want us is to run through Mpho's slides for the remaining time, and basically reflect perhaps on those images. We can just run it through as a quick slideshow, just for the people to see the work that he's been talking about. And then we'll wrap it up from there. So we'll sort of give it about a minute or 2 for the slideshow to run. So can we just maybe look at Mpho's work for about 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up from there.
Okay.
while we're looking at Mpho's work as the slide is going through, I think he raised some interesting things around how he grabbed the land through the camera when he said, the people have been grabbing land, so I also used Mrs. Van Tonner's film to actually grab her work. It's not Miss Van Tonner's work because the film was just going to be thrown away. So I've asked for the film and the film was given to me. So I then reproduced my own, I then took my own pictures using the same film, or that double exposure effect that he has actually produced through the work. So that was his way of reclaiming the work and looking at the past and the present. So it's quite amazing how basically we can look at the visual as an archival monument to say, you have these pictures that have been taken by Ms. Van Tonner, and you've got these pictures that are now being taken by Mpho, and now Mpho has an exhibition of the work that people are asking him a question, which one is actually yours and which one is Ms. Van Tonner's? And his answer is like, there's no Ms. Van Tonner's work here, it's my work, because Ms. Van Tonner's was throwing away the film. I've managed to take the old film and actually expose over the same images. And then I think it was quite interesting for me to know that he didn't even see where what was actually on the film. So he just took the film and shot what he wanted to shoot with an intention of seeing what will be the final outcome. So the only thing he can see on his camera is what he's photographing. But what he's photographing against or double exposing against is actually not seen. So that is the process that actually was quite interesting to be able to then see the final product and in the images that he has chosen. So I think that technique was quite interesting, and it was actually a good way of archiving work, even if in our terms we'll think archiving is actually taking what is already existing and making photocopies, or taking what is already existing and documenting it and shelving it and storing it in a proper way so that it's got a longer term of existence. But for him to grab the land and also archive at the same time and create a monument, if I may put it that way, of that type of work, I think it really is interesting. Thank you very much, Mpho, for your presentation. I hope people who have joined us today have learned one or two things and have also and appreciated the work that you've done. So I think we will then is there anything that you want to say in closing? You have a minute.
So in a support statement to the archival, so I think the juxtaposition that I've done on the images is also to inform, is also to actually make people aware that photography and archival, we can actually do a lot, saving other works that have been produced instead of going the normal route of what we know photography is all about, photographing and printing, maybe reprinting all on top of other people's work, and collaboration can actually also help the visual archive. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mpho Khwezi from he has shown us his piece of paper. I think all of us can really say that the work that we've seen is amazing work, and as he said, he has not completed the work. That is still ongoing. We're looking forward to see what more will come out of the project. And then please do visit the Gallery 89, where he has exhibited his work at the Market Photo Workshop, and actually come and see what Mpho Khwezi is seeing and actually feel the space. Mpho Khwezi, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we will then move over and introduce Paul Weinberg, and then I think he will also give us his short introduction and then go into his presentation. Paul, over to you. Thank you so much.
Oops, sorry. I wonder if you could start the slideshow, please. I can't see if it's on, so will you just give me a thumbs up? Is it showing? Showing. Is it showing, Silas? Okay. So I'd just like to thank everyone for this opportunity. And I'm talking about the archivist as activist, and I've been involved in archiving for about 40 years, but formally only in the last 15 years. And the more I become involved in archives, the more I realize that it's in this country, it's a project against national amnesia and also against the grain. I'd just like to start with a reference, just to give us a kind of a context, from Christopher Morton and Darren Newberry, who described the African photograph at best as a highly distributed object with endless microhistories and a vast number of custodians, archivists, curators, consumers, and reproducers. I was involved, I produced and wrote an article about African digital photography with a colleague called Dirk Schneider, and we recently published this in a journal called No Way Back. And here I would like to suggest that digitization offers a total reimagination, repurposing, and democratization of archives previously inaccessible to a continent. It offers agency, curation, and recuration of material that questions staid and fixed ideas of what Africa is. The digital moment and digitization is prevalent throughout the world, but let's just consider how it reflects on this part of the world, and particularly in South Africa. Could we move to the next slide, please? Recently, there's been an auction, and you might have seen this, of vernacular photography from South Africa. It's sold for 40,000 euros, and it was owned by someone called Alan Gousson in Brussels. The University of Johannesburg put in a bid, but they couldn't afford to pay for this. And this is just another example of our archives being hemorrhaged to the rest of the world. Next slide, please. This collection that was acquired by Stephen Dubin from Columbia University claims that a museum discarded this collection, and he acquired it in that way. And it's kind of embarrassing that people from outside have to write about our lost and found photographs. When I suggested to Stephen that he reposit this collection in South Africa, he was somewhat reticent. And so that's another collection that's left the shores. I've been involved with vernacular photography for quite some time, looking at this neglected tradition. And I produced a book and an exhibition called The Other Camera. I found, next slide, please. And the next slide, please. I found a collection of images from the Ngalima family who kept them and lived in the East Rand. And we digitized 5,000 images that became the basis of a doctoral thesis by someone called Sophie Feider at Leiden University. Next slide, please. I retrieved this collection from New York. It's the Bobson Monhanlao collection, or otherwise known as Bobby Bobson. And the deal that we made was that we would digitize this collection and make it available to them. Next slide, please. There are a number of collections what I could show, but just because of time, I'll just be quite. I won't have time to do that. But one of the important collections that we also included in the exhibition was the work of Lindeka Kampi, who was part of a photo collective called Elisa Lebantu, and she did this work on street photography and street culture in Khayelitsha. Next, please. In about 2013, or just the year before, I worked with the late David Goldblatt, Pam Warren, and Bongi Tlomo, and we curated an exhibition on Ntaba, land, which means land. And this references actually what Mpho was talking about. Next slide, please. And here we found a remarkable picture of the hut tax, which really kind of speaks to a deep issue that runs right through the South African landscape. And it was a postcard that the colonials sent back home, but it really actually talks about this travesty and what happened in this historical moment when Black people were basically forced off the land and forced to work in the mines. Next slide, please. We also found a remarkable collection of from a portrait studio in Polokwane. And the sitters in both these images are aspirant middle class, but the difference really at the time, and these were taken around the time of the 1913 Land Act, was the sitters on the left were soon to be dispossessed of land and only to get their citizenship and be able to vote 80 years later. And this defines so much about South Africa into the present. Next slide, please. The formation of the ANC was very much to do with the Land Act. And here is a group that petitioned the Queen to rescind the Land Act, but they were unfortunately unsuccessful, as we know. Next. And then along the journey, I found this image, and only because it wasn't accessible in South Africa. I searched high and wide and far for an image of this historical moment in white supremacy. And strangely enough, it was just not accessible. So we had to retrieve this image and find this image from Getty Images in London. And it's a photograph taken by Margaret Bork-White when she came to cover South Africa in 1949 for Life magazine. Next. I'm presently working on a project called the Photography Legacy Project, which includes the archives of David Goldblatt, and this is a photograph of David's here. And I'd previously been working with David's archive when I was working at UCT. I'm also working with the Khumalo family and the Ernest Cole family, as well as we've produced the work of Ruth Matau, and we continue to digitize material with the resources that are available. I'd like to single out and focus on Ernest Cole here, because it's pertinent to our conversation. Ernest Cole, for those of you who don't know, photographed Black life under apartheid in the 1960s. He left the country in 1966 and produced a book called A House of Bondage in 1967, and essentially languished in exile for many years and died 1 week after the release of Nelson Mandela in 1990 and others. The narrative until recently has been that Ernest Cole's archive was lost, his negatives and prints. And then in 2017, Leslie Matliatsani, who's the chairperson of the Cole Family Trust, was invited to go to Sweden, where he retrieved 2 trunks of material, negatives, from a Swedish bank. And so the lost archives of Ernest Cole have thankfully been found. And we're involved in digitizing with the family and Wits historical papers 14,000 of the South African negatives and 45,000. Next slide, please. 45,000 images from America, and he documented thoroughly the American South as well, and people don't know much about that. So our intention is to, with all the other archives from the Photo Legacy Project, is to make this material accessible for research and educational purposes. So in passing, or in some concluding thoughts about digitization and the archival moment, I'd like to share some with you. African photographic collections today often simply reflect their uncomfortable pasts and former colonial relationships on the one hand, and their weak institutional integration, as well as lack of resources, both financial and human, on the other. However, digitization of photographic collections and archives potentially bring to the fore a mechanism to deal with important matters like repatriation, knowledge sharing, and genuine empowerment of local skills and agency within African countries. Finally, there is a great potential too that digitized collections can become alternative historical resources in countries that boast oral and visual creative traditions, yet in which rates of literacy remain high. Digitized African photographic archives offer hope for a highly contradictory, inaccessible pattern of visual consumption. No longer tied to their location and now accessible, they can offer many new kinds of conversations and narratives, and become distribution outlets for reimagining memory, history, and heritage in their localized African contexts. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your presentation. I think among all of us here, you are the oldest monument, if I may put it that way.
I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah, no. I think we just not even listening to the presentation and just looking at you, I see that you've been through a number of cameras and you've been through a number of images. The numbers that you are mentioning of the amount of work that needs to be archived and has been archived, it's quite amazing. And I think especially the work, the idea of making sure that what has been produced in Africa remains in Africa, and those who are currently practicing and those who are coming into the future will be able to have some Pan-African reference to the type of work that we need. And in education, as a space where a lot of reference material when it comes to what was done by African photographers, it's a very disappointing space. So to have people like you who are embarking in such projects where collecting this knowledge that is not just going to be an archive visual as an archival monument, but more of work that the current and the future people, photographers, and every other person that needs to know about the history of this country from a visual point of view will have some sort of space and visual to look at the works. Thank you so much for that. I think it's a great development for our communities. It's great development for the academic space as well. I think we'll be having a lot of questions about digitizing and the whole move from digitizing analog work or conventional photography into the digital space, the challenges involved and so forth, but we'll move into that when we come into our discussions. Thank you so much again, Paul Weinberg. Gentlemen, thank you for Paul Weinberg's presentation. We will move, I think, have we lost Thando Mama? Oh, he's back. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We are going to then go to, thank you very much, Paul. We are going to go now.
I'm here. I can now see you and hear you.
Yeah, no, I can see you now because you were on and off. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to then look at Thando Mama, who speaks of reframing Ntaba kaNdoda, and I looked at most of the things he's talking about is memory and memorialization and reframing and reconfiguring the multiplicity of this place of these places and the memory as a pedagogic intervention. It's quite interesting to just hear him speak about how memory plays a role in a visual sense in terms of what he has been doing when he's been reframing Ntaba kaNdoda and what are the memories that he has taken from there, and what are the memories that basically exist and perhaps we did not even get to see through his work, but we're going to give him a platform to actually school us or share with us about reframing Ntaba kaNdoda. So over to you, sir.
Yes, good morning. I hope you can actually see me now and hear me. I have a very bad network connection where I'm at. Basically, thanks again for the opportunity and to be part of this panel this morning. Basically, Ntaba kaNdoda is a side research kind of interest for the past more than 5 years, 5 or 6 years, working at Ntaba kaNdoda. Ntaba kaNdoda is, for me, is in two places, occupies two places. One being a place itself, the monument, the mountain that is found just outside Dimbaza in the Eastern Cape between King Limstown and Alice. And on this side, can you hear me? Yeah. The monument which was constructed on this side seems to be lost.
We are having, okay, he's back. Thando, continue.
Yes.
Thando,
yeah.
You can continue.
Yeah, sorry, I was just having serious, like now in my presentation, connectivity issues. But basically, Ntaba kaNdoda is seen as a quite significant site or place in the Eastern Cape, But at the same time, post 1994, the monument itself had been kind of abandoned and forgotten, you know. But it's kind of strange because it used to be the central place of memory, you know, where people used to gather every year to pay tributes to the nation of Ciskei at that time. So my work is basically trying to draw some meaning into this commemorative in 94. I'm not sure if you can see on slide 2. Is the slide 2 up? Yes.
Yes, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. Slide 2 is up.
Okay, yeah. Basically, I spent a couple of like quite a long time going back and forth to this place, using kind of different kind of materials, photographic techniques as well. And then I kind of ended up kind of sticking with pinhole photography as well. Can you go to slide 3? Just to give you a bit of a background to Ntaba kaNdoda, which was a site really of sanctuary for most Amaxhosa during the 1800s, with some of the wars with the British, and also a site of the wars between the indigenous nations as well. With Amalinde, the Battle of Amalinde in 1818 as one of the highlights of that time. But the site itself refers to the chief who was believed to have his great place around the mountain. Thus, the name Ntaba kaNdoda actually symbolizes intercultural and spiritual interdependence between Amaxhosa, the Khoi, and the San. If we move to slide 4.
We seem to have lost Thando. Okay, he's back. Thando, can you hear me? Thando, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, Thando, we can hear you now.
Yes, detect. Okay.
Thando, can we? Thando, can you hear us? Okay, we seem to be having a technical glitch with Thando, but I think we've managed to get to hear the some of the key things that he spoke about, what motivated him to actually go to Ntaba kaNdoda and reframe it. So and I think one of the things that he's mentioned is that it seemed to have been a place that has been abandoned, and it used to be a place of significance, which it still is, but obviously not getting the focus that it needs for people to go there, for all the connections that people have with the place, it being historical and it being spiritual and otherwise. But also he is trying in his work to show us fluidity of memory, memorialization, and place in relation to inverted commas a sense of place. So we through performative photography. So we are having a panel of people who are dealing with three different perspectives in how they approach the visual as an archival monument, and the content in which they are archiving is varied, and it speaks to pertinent issues in this country, more importantly about the marginalization or forgetting of African history. So I think I need to say that if we look at the three panel members that have presented today, from Mpho Khwezi to Paul Weinberg and Thando Mama, you're looking at photographers or artists that have come from different eras in terms of the work, and I would want to believe that they've looked at the work from those different eras, and to see the young photographers as well going back to the history that has been forgotten and reframing it. That's interesting to see. We seem to have our panel back. We're still struggling with Thando, but I think because we don't have enough time, we will then have Thando come back. If he comes back, we will then get him to speak more. But I think at this time, I will open it to the floor for discussion and for engagement, for questions that any of our members of the people who have attended have in terms of questions to Mpho Khwezi's work, a piece of paper, Paul Weinberg's work, the archivist as the activist, Thando Mama's work, Reframing Ntaba kaNdoda. So if there's any questions, please do feel free to post the questions and for our panel, so that they can answer the questions and we can get into discussions. So there's a question from Cynthia Kros, and that's for Thando. If you can please clarify the Bantustan origins of Ntaba kaNdoda and then something about how you have come to reframe it, and yeah, that's for Thando. Hopefully we can reconnect with him and pose the question to him so that he can give us input. But I think my question to Paul is when you started initially with this project, Paul, of digitizing photographic work of different photographers, what really inspired you more than the politics, like outside the politics of photography or South Africa as we see it, but what really gave you that drive to say, there's a need for this and it needs to happen?
So, as you pointed out, Silas, very generously, that I'm a little older than most of you, which takes me back to the turbulent 1980s when I kind of grew up as a photographer. And in those days, the apartheid system was very much about erasing history. And I was involved with a number of projects with the History Workshop that continues to do excellent work that looked at these erased histories. I mean, some of them were about jazz, some of them were just about, I did a film about Alexander Township then. I did a project called Part of the Process, which documented the removal of people and the area called Fitas. And so we were involved in these, kind of responding to these this attempt at erasure. So it's really always been in my DNA, if you like. And then the 1994 moment came, and we all thought, wow, heritage is going to be supported. There's going to be resources for digitization, collection of archives. And sadly, that really didn't happen. And so all of us and all the people on the panel and many of you who are in this conference, we're all involved in some kind of activism to restore and reframe archives. And then, officially in 2008, I got a position at UCT, where I worked as a curator, and I started to bring in South African film and photographic archives, and that's what I've continued to do. I'm also just very aware of living on this continent, how little resources there are for us to do this work. But somehow, through digitization and the digital moment, we can play. We can be involved in these global conversations, and that's really what I try to do, is to make kind of appropriate interventions with the limited resources, and to play this work back, as you quite rightly pointed out, Silas, so that this can be used for educational and heritage purposes, and so that we also have a sense of memory, and we don't have to go to the British Museum or Duke University or Harvard to learn about our history and our sense of memory, but we can actually access it here on the continent.
Yeah, I mean, last question to you is, as how difficult was it to retrieve Ernest Cole's work?
Well, that was, again, a project of activism. I mean, the family, put pressure on the Hasselblad Foundation to find this work. Seemingly, it had been there for a number of decades, but was not made accessible. So it's a little bit like the When the Lion Sleeps Tonight, and Solomon, Linda's story. We have to continuously, press the button and be vigilant in keeping our archives, in the country, and making sure they return.
Yeah, no, I think what you're doing a very great work, and then I mean, if it's still a lot of work, but I think to people like Mpho Khwezi, who are young photographers who are in this space, and Thando, I think will it be a great advice from your side to say, as we photograph, we need to start archiving our own work, because we do photograph, and then we don't actually keep much of record, although we have the work, but the manner in which we archive work, and then we make it a monument, for argument's sake, for people to have memory of the kind of work we produce. How do we go about that? What will be your words of wisdom to our young panelists? I mean,
Well, maybe wisdom is a little bit overstated, but just to say, no, I mean, I'm very, excited and encouraged by the work of both Thando and Mpho, where they're engaging in our history and archives. I just, in my sort of, words of caution are that the problem with social media and Facebook, which are very, real and very in your face, is you can make this material available, but in terms of preservation and longevity, one needs to look at repositories so that this material can really be part of our national DNA and our continental DNA. So that is just my concern, that social media actually doesn't do it. I mean, raises the issues, but we need repositories. And the same, for all the amazing work that you do at the Market Photo Workshop. And I know that you guys are involved in documenting your history and documenting the photographers. And I would just wish you very well in that project, because it's so important that your photographers and the wonderful work you do replays into the South African and the global landscape.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thando, are you back with us? I think we still have Thando, but he's not hearing us. Okay, while we're sorting out Thando, maybe we can speak to Mpho, and I'm gonna pose a question to Mpho about what Paul has said when he said there was a time when there's this erased, basically we've got this erased histories, if I may put it that way. To say to you, Mpho, would you say then your work, one way or the other, brought back some of those erased histories in terms of your work, in terms of how you put it together? Do you see in one way or the other have done that?
Thank you, Silas. So I don't think it has brought back the history. I think the history has always been there. The question is, I had an interesting conversation yesterday with Nkosi, one of the exhibitors at the Market Photo Workshop, where we were discussing. He was saying to me, Mpho, I've just exhibited, and then his work is called Slages 2. So he's like, the project is now, the time of the project in the gallery is now up. So the project needs to go out. And then he's like, Mpho, as someone that have been in this space for a long time, and where to from here? And then I think that's the question. And I like what Paul has also spoken about, is that even with myself, like I have an exhibition running, but one thing for sure, after that time of the exhibition has run out at the Market Photo Workshop, what's going to happen to the work? So is it going to go at the back of my room behind the closet, or what's going to happen? So it's always those questions. Even me as a facilitator, when I'm facilitating at the Market Photo Workshop, when one of my students exhibits, they keep on asking me, Mpho, I've exhibited, so what's next?
Yeah.
So I think that's the question that has been ringing in my mind. I think the alternative is what Paul is also speaking about, the digitization of the archive, so that it can be accessible to other people. Because this is not my first exhibition. I had my first exhibition in Zambia. Even myself, I don't even know where the prints are.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Mpho. I think it really I think it's a very, very, very important topic, this archival way that how we archive our work, and not just to archive it, but really the visual sitting as an archival monument, so that at the end of the day, the repositories that he spoke about, that Paul spoke about, we start creating those in our practice as we work, that we don't have work all over the place, and then we can actually trace back. But I'm going to go back to Thando. He's back, so that we can give him an opportunity to perhaps allow him 5 minutes to maybe finish his presentation, and maybe pose a couple of questions to him, because there's already a question that he already has. But if you can hear us, Thando, please do give us continue with your presentation, and then we can. Okay, we lost him again. Is he? All right. No, we seem to be Thando seem to be struggling with the network. But I think the other thing that I think we spoke about that for me it's very important is that, like Mpho has just asked the question to say, from here, what do we do? It speaks to the practice of photography in terms of how we as photographers, from whether you are doing commercial work or you're telling your own stories, documentary, photojournalism, whatever space that you are in, to say you do all the work that you do, but basically once the work has left there, has been printed or sent digitally to a client or whatever, it's like, what is the next project? And you're not there. And then in terms of the histories and the heritage and the preservations that we need to have, we ourselves, one way or the other, because we can always blame it on apartheid and blame it on the politics, which they have done aggressively. They've eroded a whole lot of things. But now that we are aware of that, those type of issues, as young photographers, as photographers who are currently practicing, moving forward, what is it that we are doing to make sure that our archival processes and systems are in place so that the visual remains a monument that people can go to, and it remains, then it ignites the memories that we are speaking about. So those are some of the questions that we need to start addressing in order for us to move forward. However, on the other hand, as we have issues of resources that even Paul himself, much as he's been in this for quite some time, still is one way or the other struggling with that resource. And then maybe that's another thing that we need to look at, to say, how do we get that resource in place so that the practicing current photographers are in a position to properly do what they need to do in terms of archiving work. And then the Market Photo Workshop is already doing that. But I think we can have more support and more other ways of making sure that this archiving is not just becoming a systematic way of documenting work, but it becomes an active archive, if I can put it that way. That's something that people can go to for memory, but something that people can go to for education, because I think our education on its own, it's sitting in a very different space in terms of the kind of knowledge and content that our students are referring work from, you know. So if you look at the theory of photography and then you look at where it sits, how much of it really contains Pan-African work or photographers that you can look at and say, this is the work that I need to speak to, and then create a body of work without really going to Europe. But it also speaks to issues of the museums that are actually holding the work in Europe and in other places, to say the work is sitting there and this is our work, but we don't have rights to that work. And that's the sad part, because then who can, if Paul is not here and any other person that is an activist like Paul who are working in this kind of projects and the legacy projects that he has mentioned, who else is going to do what Paul is doing, and how many other people are there? So I think it's a very, very big project that needs support from the photographic community to start thinking even broader about it. I think I see we have Thando. We need to give Thando a moment. Thando, can you hear us? Thando, the platform is yours to maybe yeah, we don't have enough time, but in about 4 minutes or so, wrap up your presentation, and a number of questions that we have from the floor, we can take them for you as well.
Silas, I see there's a very interesting question to come from Candice, your colleague.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No.
Can I kick off here with answering it?
Yes, you can. You can.
So, and you alluded to it just now. I mean, essentially, our historical archives, most of them from the continent and the country, are not here. They reside in the Berlin Missionary Society or the British Museum or the Smithsonian. And one of the things we've done in the PLP is just to create a resource. So we have like a database of all these, collections. And I think this is a wonderful moment, and it's not about Paul. I mean, it's all of us, that can put pressure on these institutions to engage in a kind of repatriation. And the digital moment allows for these collections to come back and for us to re-examine, reimagine, and even the troubled ones, the ethnographic ones from the difficult colonial past. There are many ways to reenact with them and reframe them and rehumanize them. So I think it's a great question that Candice has asked, and I would encourage all the people who visual activists and archivists out there to put pressure on these institutions who sit kind of comfortably in the first world with our material.
Yeah, no, I think I'll pose the same question, and then just to read it out. Can Mpho and Paul and Thando talk about the uses of the colonial photo archive for the future of Black visual history? And she continues to ask the next question to say, what kinds of new ways of researching, practicing photography are needed to make photo archives speak to the present? So I'll open that question to Thando and Mpho as well to basically elaborate further. Mpho, maybe you can start.
Okay. I think when with a lot of information that has been going on in relation to apartheid. So I don't know about the other guy. I don't know about the other people, but in my area, in where I grew up, the stories that we had.
Sorry, Paul, can you have your camera tilted the other way around?
Okay. So with my parents, with also our parents, what they've told us, I know what my parents have told me about the apartheid system, how they were oppressed. But I think we have never had the side of the oppressor. So I think with my attempt, with my shots, including Miss Van Tonder, is actually trying to get to give her a voice also to speak about the land also, because one thing for sure, there's always two sides of the story. So it's Miss Van Tonder, who are the white people who came and own the land of Sebokeng, and then now we have come to Sebokeng and inherited the land. So what also needs to be spoken about is also her side of the story, the side of the story of the people who bought the land, as she's also white.
Okay, Thando, can you hear us? Did you get the question?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Thando.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite a loaded question, but it's the one that we constantly think about when, for example, when we dealing with these sites of memory, personally for my work. If you see on slide 3 of my presentation, I had an archive image of Ntaba kaNdoda, which I think I found those images at the Corey Library with Rhodes University. But for me, it was a point of reference. How do you reference something that you might have suspicion to exist? Where can you, for example, with Paul, can you go to access some of the material, somehow there are also recent or contemporary kind of archives. For example, for me working with the site with David Goldblatt, who actually, I think around 1990, photographed the monument, and also Cedric Nunn, who came a bit later, I think in the early 2000s, to photograph the site. And I've also spoken to both of them about their own experience on the mountain. But with that in mind, I also think about my conversation that I
All right, we seem to have lost Thando again. And I was going to ask him a question that we've got from Cynthia Kros. It's unfortunate, but we're hoping he can still come back within the limited minutes that we are having. But just looking at the work in terms of archiving, and perhaps just following up to Candice's a question, that in terms of research, how can we make sure that even the researchers start to take interest in this kind of work that all three of you are actually doing, which is literally trying to reframe and archive work or archive histories that were maybe erased or moved in other places and actually reclaiming them. So how, and in terms of photography, how can photography play a role in making sure that people or researchers or anyone that is involved in research can start looking at research not from a position of just writing, but also from a position of actually looking for this kind of visuals and making it their taking an effort or making it owning it as a, maybe if I can say, a research activist to go and find the work, because most of the time is when we do research and we look for an image or something and we don't find it, we then leave it and then we go to something that works because we've tried to look for that, but we don't go to that extent of being activists to a point of saying, I know where the work is, or I know there's a Paul who's busy with this kind of project and maybe I need to lend him a hand or go as a team or whatever the case may be to support the idea of getting the type of images that I want for my research work. So that's a question basically that I'll have, and maybe you can speak to it, Paul. You can speak to it and hear what you're saying. Is Thando back? Okay, Thando. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Sorry, Paul. Thando's back. Can we just give him some time and get him to? Thando, can you continue?
Yes. Me. Having serious
Yeah, no.
The connection is well,
yeah.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Oh, Thando, we are definitely struggling. Thando, we are struggling with your connection. It's unfortunate. I would have wanted to hear Thando answering some of the questions that were asked. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time. We need to move and we need to wrap up. So, ladies and gentlemen, who are part of this conference and my,
can you hear me now?
are struggling. We don't have enough time.
Yeah.
But maybe we should just wrap it up quickly and get 30 seconds, Paul, just wrap it up. And then from there, Mpho, and then we're closing.
Okay, well, I'm sort of back on the digitization, train, because, that's our sort of the appropriate vehicle that we can engage with these uncomfortable histories and relocate them from foreign institutions. But we should also really start, back home, because there are many repositories, there are many kind of collections, sometimes in families, that are just intriguing and that tell so many stories on multiple ways. So it's not just the institutions with the capital I, it's quite often those places where you never thought. And getting a digitized archive then becomes a little repository that you can just grow and grow and add and augment to other repositories and become, just the continuing stories that we're engaged with.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your time. And we are running out of time, but thank you to my panelists for making time to do presentations and then having this discussion. Despite the glitches that we're having, I think we have learned something, and thank you very much for your time.